Good afternoon. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and thank you all for being here today. It's wonderful to see a full house and to sense the energy and excitement for this meeting today, during which the chair of our Board of Trustees, Chuck Lillis, will address the Senate and the campus community. We're all looking forward to that very much. Without further ado, I'd like to ask you to consider the minutes of October 22nd, 2014. Do I see any hands for comments or corrections related to the minutes of October 22nd? Seeing none, the minutes will stand approved, and we will move quickly on to the State of the University address by Interim President Scott Coltrane, and Scott will be receiving questions following his remarks. Please welcome the President.
Thanks, Rob. I feel bad for people standing in the back. There are some seats. Rob, do you have executive authority to allow people to kind of infiltrate down here? So come on down and fill in a little bit. We'll leave room for senators right up here who come in late. But so thank you, Rob, and it's my honor to welcome our board chair, Chuck Lillis, who will follow me. When we began talking about the agenda, Rob and I and Chuck and I, we had hoped to keep my remarks very short, but there's just a lot going on. And so the agenda that I want to cover fairly quickly is to talk some about the mission statement, just overarching goals where we are, and how that is leading to a campus-wide strategic planning effort. I want to give you an update on that. Provost Burnett and I have been working to get that going. Federal higher education research funding, some sexual assault issues, GTFF bargaining, and some of the issues that you'll be facing later on your agenda. Also, open meetings legislation has been heating up, and I need to do some messaging around that. And then talk a little bit about an event happened a couple days ago, relaunching the campaign for an on-campus audience. So all these issues carry some urgency, and I feel like I need to touch on them. So I'll hit the high points, and then please ask questions when I get to the end. So overall, you saw the mission statement revision, and really the nuts and bolts of that will come out in the strategic planning effort. We are committed to exceptional teaching, discovery, and service, and in a framework that we're calling competitive excellence. We really need to improve our metrics, need to improve our standing nationally and internationally. We have great potential, and that's the overarching mission of what we're doing. How's the strategic planning effort going? As of tomorrow or the next day, you will see on the Provost website a list of committees. These 4 task force groups are designed to look at what are our near-term strategic objectives and the longer-term objectives. The first is attract high-quality, diverse students and promote student access, success, retention. Second is to elevate research, scholarship, and creative profile, including expanding graduate education. The third, attract and retain high-quality, diverse faculty and staff. And the fourth, enhance physical and IT infrastructure to ensure academic excellence. So each of these task forces will have 12 to 14 members. Virtually all of the members have now agreed, and so you'll find out in the next day or two. Each committee will have 4 or 5 faculty, 2 students, 1 classified staff member, 1 or 2 OAs, and 4 or 5 administrators. The members were sought, as you well know, by nomination. Some are representatives from standing committees of the Senate that have jurisdictional authority over some of the pieces. The kickoff for these groups is tomorrow evening at McMorran House. We'll post the final rosters so you'll see who those people are. These are going to be gatekeepers, kind of a switchboard for getting other campus input into the process. So they won't be making the decisions per se, but they're really the focal point for getting the strategic planning launched. And I thank Frances Burnett and her team for getting this going. Each of the committees will be chaired jointly by 1 faculty member and 1 administrator, And here's the key point that you'll appreciate. The administrator will bring staffing to the committee so that in terms of getting the work done, getting the research done, having contact in other university units where you need information to do the planning, that's going to be built in. So thanks to Francis for that. I want to give a quick update on federal funding. We have an exceptionally supportive Oregon delegation. I met most of them while they were in town campaigning, most of them. All 7 members of the Oregon delegation participated in campus events during October, and they're very committed to higher education. So I spoke to them about how we're doing in Congress, how support for the UO might look in the coming Congress. We had midterm elections brought a new duck to Congress. You may not have noticed because he wasn't on our ballots. Ryan Zinke is a geology major, graduated from UO in 1984. He'll represent Montana in Congress. But at any rate, what's important now is that we have a federal budget that's expiring. The federal budget is hugely important to us. I think most people aren't quite aware. We have more than $180 million a year that comes to us, mostly in form of financial aid to our students, and almost $100 million in research dollars. And that's a number that's trending up. So that together is about 6 times more than we get from the state on an annual basis. So how we're doing in the federal budget is hugely important. We're working on our delegation to make sure that our interests are met. It's critical to everything we do. We also work with other organizations. I've been meeting with APLU and the AAU. They have a very strong advocacy effort that's mounted at the federal level. There's also some private, recently the Portland Business Alliance and the Eugene and Springfield Chambers of Commerce became members of a business coalition for federal research funding. And this is important because the federal government has really backed away from funding basic science, from really creating the innovation subsidies that make us a leader in higher education and in discovery. We really need the federal government to reinvest. And there's various other things that you might have read about, and attacks on NSF funding for social sciences, things like that, that we really just need to be vigilant about. There's really some misguided efforts here to undermine how important university funding, federal funding for universities has been. Addressing sexual assault, I want to just do a quick update. One of the recommendations of the Senate Task Force concerned the Ombuds program, and one of the issues on your agenda for today is about the Ombuds program. Just give you a quick update. After consulting with the Ombuds and our General Counsel and seeing where there are differences that needed to be ironed out, I commissioned some outside legal advice. We now have an opinion that I think gives us a way forward. So the Ombuds and our General Counsel are working to craft legislation that our Board of Trustees, under Chuck's leadership, will look at if it all comes together next month, the beginning part of December. My sense is we'll be able to craft the OAR that we inherited from the state, now is owned by the campus itself. If the board can change that Oregon administrative rule, and we're also able to rewrite the charter for the Ombuds office, we'll then be able to launch an Ombuds office that is fully functional and has the kind of best practices nationally about confidentiality that still fulfills our federal obligations for other kinds of reporting. So I think that's going well. I can't share that with you yet because they're still working on the text, but I think they're working well together, and I think we'll get that done. The AAU climate survey, you might have seen in this morning's paper. Jennifer Fried, our own researcher, and a group of national experts in sexual violence, we're pushing back on the AAU survey. So Jennifer and I are going to meet, and we're going to talk more widely. I'll talk with the AAU about what that effort's about. We haven't made any decisions yet. We'll be looking at what's the best practice, what the campus will do, what kind of data we'll get for a campus climate. I think campus climate surveys are a great idea. We just need to sort out what's the best way to forward on that. On sexual assault, the other 2 things I'm still awaiting are the President's Review Panel. Next month I'll get their report along with an assessment from Student Life, a gap analysis. So just to remind you, that stuff will come in the last week of the term. Then in winter term, I plan to have a series of discussions back with the Senate, but also with a lot of student groups about how we can have a comprehensive campaign to address sexual assault prevention. Bargaining. So the latest information on bargaining is on the Provost website. I very much encourage everyone to go to that website. It has updated information. Last week we made considerable movement at the mediation session. It was not accepted by the GTFF. We still have opportunities for mediation. What we want to do is avoid a strike. On the other hand, we think there's some misinformation floating around, and we think that it's important for the administration's position to be known. We've moved considerably. The other thing I need to say is that some faculty have been approaching me and the administration wanting to be involved in the bargaining, wanting to influence the bargaining. I think it's very important for everybody to be able to state their own position, whether they support, have an ideological, political, or union-affiliated belief. But bargaining is not something that's done by unit members. We have 2 bargaining contracts going on right now with the GTFF and with the police union. Pretty soon we'll be in bargaining for United Academics and for SEIU. These things are handled by administrative teams that are not members of those bargaining units, and it's important to keep those things separate. We'll be doing, for the administration's piece, we'll be providing options to individual faculty members. One of the items on your agenda is about what you do in your classes in the event of a strike. If we get there, if we're going to have a strike, we will provide options, we'll provide financial resources and support to get through it. Our first obligation is to our students. We need our students to get grades. We don't want to jeopardize their financial awards. We want to get the completion of the term adequately to meet those student needs. But those bargaining things happen at the bargaining table. We're under great pressure, including from state collective bargaining laws, to operate at the bargaining table, not outside of that process. But stay tuned. The websites that you'll see on the Provost webpage, we'll be doing more messaging about it. We're still in that hopeful stage that the mediation will get this done. Open meetings. What I posted here on the slide is an excerpt from the legislation that was passed in the Senate in April, I believe, and that called for the open meetings of all the standing Senate committees to be implemented as of this fall. But what I need to ask the Senate to do is to modify the time limits associated with that open meetings legislation and request an extension that will allow the Committee on Committees time to complete its work. So as I understand it, the Committee on Committees is meeting with subgroups. The faculty committees at issue are the FAC, the Faculty Advisory Council, the SBC, the Senate Budget Committee, and the FPC, the Faculty Personnel Committee. So all 3 of those have arguments, and there's debates about whether they should be subject to the open meetings rule or not. The Committee on Committees is reviewing that, and then we'll make a recommendation. I think what happened is unforeseen events, including the presidential shift, a lot on the Senate agenda in the summer, kept the Committee on Committees from addressing these concerns. So just today, I sent a memo to the President of the Senate as specified in the Constitution, asking for an extension of the time frame so that the Senate committee can do its work and make a recommendation to the full Senate and then to me as President so that we can figure out how those committees are going to operate. So I'm requesting an amendment to the time limits to allow this work of the Senate to proceed in chronological order as intended. The campaign. This week we restaged the campaign kickoff event. Last month on October 17th, you probably saw the big tent that went up at Hayward Field. We invited many of our top donors and had a very extravagant and uplifting event. And part of that event that was so wonderful, we invited faculty to present to our donors. We had video of many of the best faculty on campus. The best part of that show was really who we are and what we're doing on the academic and how we've really achieved a lot, and we can achieve a lot more with their private investment. So we retooled and shared that with faculty and staff on campus in the Ford Alumni Center, and that was a great event. Now what we're going to do is take that show on the road to cities all across the U.S. and see how many millions of dollars we can get to go toward that goal of $2 billion that we're going to raise. We want to double or triple our endowment so that we have financial security in the future. As part of that, we received, just announced last week, Connie Balmer, who was here before you a couple of weeks ago, was not public at that time, but at the time they were negotiating a gift. She and her husband have given $50 million to the university, $25 million for Pathway Oregon, which is enormously successful. The Oregon students of limited financial means, that's huge. That will serve hundreds of more students who are Pell eligible. $20 million for health promotion. This is one of the cluster hires. Obesity prevention. This is College of Education working with human physiology and biology, the Prevention Science Institute. A great program will enable us to hire 3 to 5 faculty there. And then also $5 million for a branding initiative. And you'll see this rolled out after the first of the year. I just saw a great ad in the New York Times Sunday section for UCLA. It was just it did a full-page ad. It's something we at the University of Oregon have not done, but the firm that we're working with, 160/90, they're expensive, but they're very good. They also represent UCLA and Notre Dame and University of Florida. They do a great job branding their academics and really recruiting both private giving, but also recruiting the best students to come to our university. So this is something we want to have funded from private gifts. Connie Ballmer's generosity helps us do that. She's a journalism grad, and she saw the need for doing that. That's not enough to sustain that. UCLA spends about that every year. We need to be in that world. Those are our peers. We need to be able to sell ourselves in the same way. We have just 6% of our operating budget, our total budget, coming from state funding, so we have to rely more on private giving, and this initiative is really to tell that story. And I want to give a special thanks to all the faculty who are involved in those efforts. Those branding efforts are really about us and what we do in our labs, in our classrooms, in our scholarship, what we do for students and what we do for the state of Oregon. We really are the innovators for the state, and we have to sell that to the legislature so they'll up that 6% to something, hopefully double that. But we'll be moving forward on both those fronts. So I'll stop there. I know that's a lot of disparate things, but I'll take a few questions before we hear from Chuck. Yeah.
So I'm pretty new here, and forgive me for having more than a few questions, but I guess I'll only really need an answer on your last question. So I have a lot of questions. I question the university's priorities. I wonder why it feels like research and athletics are put over education, and why our money is wasted on legal teams and scabs rather than on the GTF's cost of living and living conditions. I question what Joan Acker would think about flexible paternity hours rather than actual paternity leave. I question the academic standards that are held when you think that a scab will be able to grade my 12-page research paper comparing different theorists, because I really only think my GTFs are prepared for that. I question the motives for discriminating against women and families specifically, and I question why it's allowed even though it goes directly against everything that you've researched. And I also question, and this is the one that maybe I'd like your answer on, I question why any woman would ever come to the university if the university's administration has failed to protect them against sexual violence and it actively discriminates against them from at least going to grad school and being family women as well as academia. I feel like if you could answer maybe a question specifically about women, of why women should go to the university. And lastly, I guess I would like to say that if it was possible for me to get my degree from Lane Community College, then I would have, because it just feels like my money is better spent there than it is being spent here. So I guess if you could answer that, and maybe my own comment would be in words that everyone here understands. When it comes to the GTF contract, just do it.
I appreciate that you have some assumptions about what's going on. I challenge many of the premises of the things that you're saying. We don't discriminate against women. The mandatory, flexible time off is a really good benefit. It's better than many others. It's better than all our peers. The benefit package is really generous that we put on the table. We will serve our undergraduates. That's very important to us. Research is also important. And equal opportunity and protecting students is important. So we can talk some more, but okay. Other questions? It's because you want to hear Chuck is why you're not asking me questions. All right, thanks. And Another question? Deborah.
Just said something I didn't understand. What's the mandatory? Are you talking about the FMLA, the 12 weeks FMLA?
Check out the Provost website. In the latest mediation session with the GTFF, a guaranteed flexible 2 weeks leave is what we put on the table to meet students' need, which we felt was what the GTFF was interested in. They rejected it. See what we offered, and make your own opinion about it. Okay, thanks. See you in 2 weeks.
Thank you so much for your remarks, Scott, and for taking those questions. I would like to clarify one point. There has been a bit of confusion that some people at the university, some members of our community, still think that somehow the Senate is at the negotiating table. And I just wanted to clarify that the Senate is not involved in collective bargaining. And that's by definition of who we are, and it's also according to labor law and the other strictures that govern collective bargaining as it currently exists. So I just want to make that clear so everybody understands. As you know, we did pass legislation last time related to the GTFF situation. So we can do that through motions that are resolutions. Next, we will hear from our chairman of the Board of Trustees, and I would like to begin by thanking Chuck Lillis so much for making a special trip to the university today from his home in another state, coming here specifically to address all of you, the Senate and members of the campus community, regarding university priorities. As you know, we are at a critical time for this university, and our commitment to this university that we love is crucial. So I would ask you today to really listen intensely to what Chuck is going to communicate to us. He is going to have some things to say that I think will be bracing for some of us to hear in a good way, in a way we need to hear. We are forming a constructive and meaningful relationship with our Board of Trustees. And we're going step by step to do that and developing a means of real communication. And not only his presence here today, but his commitment to communicating with you in a direct and heartfelt way is very important to the evolution of our relationship. So I thank you for your intense and well-intentioned listening today. He is also very happy to take questions after he gives his presentation, which will last about a half hour. And in that regard, I would like to say that our agenda timing is going to be extended to accommodate our need to hear Chuck and the fullness of his statement, and then to offer questions. You're very welcome to participate. Also, I'd like to let you know that he will be making, I'm going to call them proposals, some proposals to us today in the Senate, ways that we can help the university, ways that we can partner with the board. And we will be looking at these ways through the Senate Executive Committee and coming back to the Senate with some very definite proposals to further our relationship with the board and to serve the highest interests of the university. So without further ado, and also with thanks, please welcome Chuck Lillis.
Thank you, Rob. Goodness, it's a standing room only. We should have raised money in here today. That's what we really need. I really appreciate very much the opportunity to speak with you. There is one open seat now down here, incidentally. You can. I've been on the job as chair of the Board of Trustees about a year, officially only since July, but we started working last December in actuality. And I think we've learned a lot. The board's learned a lot. I've learned a lot. I thought I knew quite a bit about universities when I started, but I'm still learning a lot, so thanks for putting up with us. I wanted to do two things today. One is talk to you a little bit about what you do as work as a Senate, and encourage you to work with the administration and the board in a collegial, positive way, working on really serious problems that we face. So one of the things when I talked with Rob a couple of months ago, and I said, gosh, I don't hear much from the Senate that addresses the really sort of top 10 problems the university faces. Rob said, well, we certainly want to, but we may not be well informed on what those top 10 problems are. And I said, voila, just invite me and I'd be glad to share them with you, and here I am. So thank you, Rob, for this opportunity. I'm going to go through what I worry about in terms of problems for the university, but first I want to make two comments. One is, because I know I'll get asked, one is about shared governance. And I'm often asked, are you a supporter of shared governance? And the answer is, I'm an absolute supporter of shared governance when it's done well. And when it's dysfunctional, I'm not such a big supporter. And I think shared governance, it's certainly not new to the University of Oregon. It's not new to universities. The concept is not new at all in business, where I've spent a fair amount of my life. It's not new in any complex organization that's people-intensive. But in some places, it's done much better than others. In some places, it's an overpowering success. In others, it's a very dysfunctional process. I believe it's dysfunctional when it's based on confrontation. And I think it's very powerful when it's based on a shared commitment on shared problems and issues. So I would appeal to you, as I've appealed to the deans and any group of one or more who will listen to me, that we approach our complicated problems, we do it in a collegial, shared, respectful, professional way. And I think we can do that. And I think the people in this room can make that happen. And I think the administration can make that happen. And I hope you've noticed that, thanks to Scott and Francis and others, that this is a very open relationship that we have between the administration and the board and the faculty. I'll apologize. One time I often will use faculty when I mean the university. But I'll also share a bias with you. I think a university is only as good as is the faculty. You can't package enough stuff around a university if the faculty aren't particularly strong and particularly good. And finally, as an introductory comment, I bet you're anxious for me to get to my real comments, but as an introductory comment, I would say I think the University of Oregon is a good university, but not a great university. I think we can be a great university. We have, at this moment, all complex organizations have moments like this, seminal moments. We have a seminal moment. And we can decide to be good, or we can decide to be great. And some of the problems I want to describe to you are how we can at least give ourselves the opportunity to move from good to great. I think we all have to do this. Shame on us if we don't take advantage of this moment. So let me talk about a couple of things. We're in the process. Connie was here recently talking about the presidential search. Is there anyone here who doesn't know that we're looking for a president? I got that. Is Helena here? Are you here, Helena? Our new student trustee. I don't see you. You probably know everyone, but I was going to introduce you. We're looking for a president. Connie Ballmer chairs the search committee. The search committee has met with 4 different consultants who assist in searches. They've interviewed 4 different ones. They've hired one to help. It's a pretty standard method for university presidential searches. Every one of the 4 consulting firms, unprompted, said in one form or another, the University of Oregon has a kind of a bad national reputation as a place where the faculty and the administration are constantly at each other and don't get along. And that may, I'm quoting them, and that may harm your search for a president. Well, I don't know how you feel, but that's just damned embarrassing to me. That is an embarrassment that we cannot overlook. We have to fix that class problem. So, part of our activities, part of our responsibilities as members of the community are that our behaviors have consequences. We have to learn to live with those consequences, but we can't have that kind of an image and be a great university. My guess is many of you don't know that we have that kind of an image. But when 4 independent search firms from throughout the country come and say that to us, that isn't so good. Okay, so without further ado, let me tell you what keeps me awake at night. Incidentally, one of my sons, I have 3 children and 8 grandchildren, and one of my sons said to me recently, well, how's it going in your board duties? And I said, well, it's really fascinating. It's really fascinating. I've never had a full-time job for no pay where I'm expected to be a major benefactor. And he said, wisely, you know, Dad, I'm glad you didn't find this opportunity early in your life. That's what I would have said, too, if I'd been. So here are the issues that just, I literally wake up at night worried about. I'm not making that up. Problem number 1, and Scott touched on this, is we are financially weak. We're very weak if we want to be a great university. And we're weak operationally and in the same sense that a firm would be weak in a balance sheet. And I just want to talk about this a little bit because it's sort of easy to decide that the solution to most of our problems is money. But there's some truth to that in our case. Let's start with our operating budget. It's a little under $1 billion a year. We get about $50 million of that from the state. It's often described as disinvesting. I hate that word. What is disinvesting? You know, I have a PhD in business and I couldn't define disinvesting. So we have about $1 billion a year operating budget. We get about 5% or $50 million or so from the state. Resident undergraduate students pay for about 83% of the cost of their education. We subsidize the rest of that. And you know how we subsidize that. We subsidize that sometimes with non-resident tuition. We subsidize it with gifts. We subsidize it with overhead on research grants. But we subsidize that somehow, right? And we try to do that in an environment where we won't raise tuition. Well, this is almost requires financial magic. So we have this case where we are weak financially. The single most telling statistic is that we spend about $30,000 a year per student to deliver our educational mission. Put $30,000 in your mind. The equivalent number at UCLA or Washington or Michigan is it's at least twice that. Let's say it's 75,000. If you look at their statistic, it would say 130,000. But if you back out all the medical and healthcare, medical school and stuff, let's take half of it out. We're still outspent 2 to 1. That means we have to be really, really efficient to be competitive. Because what do we have for the economists in the room? We have exactly the same factor costs, don't we? We try to hire the same faculty. We buy the same lab equipment. We build similar buildings. We have basically the same kind of cost structure. That $30,000 makes us last of the public AAU universities. No one spends less that's a public AAU university. How many of you really are familiar with what AAU university means? If you're not, you should get familiar with it. It's the 60 or 61 highest rated, but at least in the AAU sense, comprehensive research universities in the country. Half are private, half are public. It's the cast of characters you would expect. Harvard, Yale, Chicago, Stanford, etc. On the private side, Michigan, UCLA, Washington, Ohio State, etc. on the public side. Of the 30 or 31 public AAU universities, we rank last in spending per student at $30,000. That only will terrify you when I tell you how much it would cost for us to go from last to next to last. The difference, remember I said we had an operating budget of just under $1 billion. For us to go from 31st to 30th would require an increase of something around $300 million a year. Let's see, 300 as a percentage of 100 is like a big percentage increase, right? And if we're to fill that gap, how are we going to fill that gap? It's going to be filled heavily with private money. Heavily with private money. So our financial condition is a problem. Problem 2, in my opinion, our tenure-track faculty is undersized by perhaps 130 to 150 positions. I think Scott has done a very good job in the competitive excellence presentation to use a similar number, 130 to 150. 130 to 150 tenure-track positions. Is this important? Is it important? Well, I think it's very important. We teach about twice as many, the GTFs in the room will probably all applaud, but we teach about twice as many undergraduate student credit hours with other than tenure-track faculty as our AAU peers do. And we got there behaving rationally, didn't we? We had no money, so we used some tenure-track positions to partition into various kinds of lectureships. Over the last 10 years, as you perhaps know, the university has grown enrollment 20 or 25%, and during that period there was zero net increase in tenure-track faculty positions. So if you feel like you have large classes and complicated size classes and busy labs and et cetera, it's because we grew enrollment and didn't increase tenure-track faculty positions. So we think we're 130 or 150 short. That thought, if you fill that gap with endowed dollars, that's a $1 billion price tag. So, you know, we used to talk about raising 5 or 10 or 20 million to do something. That's a $1 billion price tag to fix that, if it's fixed with endowed dollars, that problem. Some of us are working very hard to try to figure out how to do that. It generally translates itself into me running around begging, but I have no pride. I'm willing to beg. It's okay. Problem 3, how many students are there here? Oh, my Lord. A couple. Problem 3, in my opinion, is this. I'm not being critical. Our student quality has increased, and it's good, but we're not as good as our AAU peers in student quality. We haven't done as good a job of getting the best and the brightest to come here as students that we should do. In fact, I think of the top 300 or 400 high school graduates in the state each year, I think more go to this other local institution than come here. I'm pretty sure that's accurate. You know, I wouldn't want to be quoted on that, but I think I'm right. Why is that? Well, one of our problems is we have a very low discount rate. How many of you know what a discount rate means here? The economists in the room know everything I'm saying, for God's sakes. A discount rate. This means we have a stated tuition and fee level, and on average, people come for something less than those tuition and fees. And that's usually a product of scholarship funding and a variety of other kinds of funding. Our discount rate is 9.2%. A competitive number is probably 16 or 17%. Now, this is a two-edged sword, isn't it? The fact that it's low at 9.2% means we have money to use for other things. The fact that it's low at 9.2% may also mean that we're not competitive in recruiting the best and bright students. So our student quality is good. It's improving, but it's not good enough yet. Problem 4. In the state of Oregon, there is and this would be true where I live in Colorado or Washington or probably California. There's a very low level of knowledge in the part of the citizens, who are all good taxpayers, incidentally, and do produce the money we do get. There's a very low level of knowledge about what the university is about what we do, what kind of people we are. It's difficult to distinguish quantity from quality of our work. It's very hard for them to tell you what doing research means, how that benefits them, what that research would be. In a recent survey that was done, 3% of the people in this state believe we have a medical school. Well, that's just the tip of the iceberg. There are there's just a general lack of understanding. I think if you're going to be a great university, somebody ought to know that. And as you heard from Scott, we're figuring out how to tell the world that we're great, and we're spending some money to do it, goodness sakes. And every university does this. So I think, I'll come back to this problem, but I think this lack of understanding is a serious issue. It's not surprising that disinvestment has occurred. Problem 5. I'm going to get closer to things that you might not agree with me on as I move along here. I did the easy stuff up front. So, problem 5, the process of approving new or changed academic programs is, you can tell I'm my own speechwriter, ridiculously long. And I'll bet every one of you have said that. I bet every one of you have said that. My God. How many people have to sign off on this? How many committees and councils and deans and vice deans and associate provosts, and how many people have to sign? And now the board probably wants to sign off. I will tell you, I'm fighting that the board doesn't have to sign off, but I'm not sure I'm going to win that battle. So my estimate is that for every one person proposing a change, so think of adding a degree, changing a major, creating a new discipline, creating a certificate program. My estimate is that for every one person who proposes that, about 100 people feel the responsibility or need or authority to review it. That's a really bad ratio. If we expect to move the ship forward in any timely manner. I think we got here. I think you should ask yourself, how did we get here? You could test my number of 1 in 100, but I think I'm pretty close. How did we get here? How did this happen? I don't think it's where anybody wants to be. I think it happened because of distrust. I think it happened because of distrust. And the most common reason there is distrust is incompetence. So I think there were a series of events where maybe decisions that in retrospect weren't correct. And the State Board of Higher Education and the university and the governor and the legislature and everybody else decided the way to mitigate that distrust was what? Add more checkers. Add more checkers. It's tragic. We can't be a great university where every person thinks it's their role to question every other decision. It just won't work. We're too big, too complex. The world's moving too fast. So shall I keep going, or it's okay so far? All right. So I think this need to check is, as devastating as it is further exacerbated by, in my opinion, there's a bit of a lack of a sense of urgency. And boy, that's really expensive now, because this is our moment. This is our moment at this university. We may not get this kind of a moment again soon, and we have to move, and we have to move smartly. And so I think this sense of urgency, somehow we have to instill in ourselves. Problem 6. You probably are about now saying, geez, he must never sleep. He's always worrying about these problems. There's some truth to that. Problem 6, our endowment's about $700 million. It needs to be about $2 billion to be competitive. If we're successful in our $2 billion campaign, we have no idea how much we'll go into as a form of endowment, but we might come out of the campaign at 1.2 or 3 billion. If we could get our endowment to 2 billion, which we will not in this campaign, but if we could get it to 2 billion, it would put us in the sort of the top 10 or 15 public universities in the country. And it would allow us to be competitive in the sense of a strong balance sheet. We'd have some risk capital to invest. We could try some things. We could hire some unique kinds of faculty members. Just as an example, so think of our endowment at $700 million. I've had a long relationship with the University of Puget Sound in Tacoma, which is quite a good small private school. They have 2,600 students. We have 26,000. Their endowment is a little over $350 million. Now, you might say, yeah, but they're a private school. We're a private school financially. Make no doubt about it. Like it or not, or whether you like those words, it's true. So if we can get that endowment to $2 billion, or close to it, we give ourselves a real chance to do some unique things for the quality of the academic activities at this university. And if it isn't clear to you now, I'll just say it. It is the driving force in my mind. It's the reason I agreed to be on the board. It's the reason I agreed unknowingly to be chair. I'm not sure how that happened, but here I am. Is because I have a passion for us to improve our academic quality. We can be better. We have to be better. Okay. Problem 7, we've had a disastrous churn at the presidential level for a variety of reasons. It's expensive. It's expensive in terms of continuity of strategy. It's expensive in terms of raising funds. It's expensive in terms of our relationship with every external organization. I'm not going to talk about the mechanics or the issues we're facing doing the presidential search because I know Connie was here. But a decent indicator of the sense of urgency that the board feels is that without having a permanent president, we're going ahead with our $2 billion capital campaign. There aren't a lot of universities who would have made that decision. We made that decision for two reasons. One was it's urgent that we get moving. The second was that we are thrilled with the kind of leadership that we have in places, in a number of places in the university. Scott and Francis and VPs, we think we have a good enough leadership team that we can go forward with this aggressive capital campaign. So, and I do this every time, but Scott and Francis, thank you for the great job you're doing. Problem 8, we need a new major science facility. If we successfully hire 50 new tenure-track science professors, which would I think that'd be wonderful. I don't know, if I were in the humanities, I might say, how could we find 50 poets? But, I think for the moment, we need to turn a bit more into the sciences. But if we were able to hire 50, we have no place for them to be. We don't have adequate laboratory space. We don't have adequate classroom space for them to deal with. We don't have office space for them. So we need a new major science facility. Such a facility might cost $300 or $400 million. It will have to be funded 100% by gift money. So if you're kind of keeping track of how much I'm out begging for with Mike Andresen and others, it's getting to be a big number. Problem 9, our IT backbone infrastructure desperately needs upgrading for research, instruction, administration, everything. Many of you do research where, quote, big data analysis are required. I have my own theory why that is. I one time years ago read this book called The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. Have any of you read that by Kuhn? It's a near biblical experience. And he argues a simple case. He says that all sciences are defined by a defining paradigm. And the example he uses of this is when I took physics, but it's a lot different now, but the F equals ma as an example. Well, in the biological sciences and in many of the social sciences, I don't think we have that defining paradigm. And how are we looking for that? This is your work. You're looking for it with a massive investigation of correlations. I happen to be involved in a proteomics company, which is we're grinding up computing capacity, looking for correlations between protein and disease. So I think we need this super new IT backbone. I don't know how much this is going to cost, but the challenge the board has out is let's get the plan in place so we can go ask for the help. So I've probably spent as much time as I should in terms of what I worry about. There are many other things we worry about: sexual violence, student conduct in general, faculty conduct in general, where to invest money in the foundation, which I was going to say something about, but I guess I'll pass. Role of athletics. These are all favorite subjects. We debate and discuss these all the time. But let me return to my thesis. You work hard. You've put in, 15,800
hours a year to the committee.
You put in a ton of time. You work on all kinds of important problems. My understanding is that some great work is done, particularly in various committees. The question I would ask is, are you doing anything that helps us address these mega tough problems? Now, some of you, maybe many of you would say, well, how in the world can I or we do anything about some of those? And I think that's a legitimate question. And some of the problems I discussed, there isn't anything you can do, except probably sort of stay out of the way while we try to solve them. But in some of them, while I don't have the answers, I have some ideas, and I think there are things that the Senate could take on. And my door is wide open. I think you should challenge me. You should challenge the leadership of the Senate. You should challenge Scott and Francis. You should challenge the deans. And ask yourself the question. I'm going to spend a zillion hours. What should I be spending them on? And some of what you spend it on, I don't think is the right answer. I'm not going to make that list, but there are a couple that I would challenge, maybe more than two. So the pleading is, think about what you do, please. Please, 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 let's all work together in a civilized, respectful, collegial, professional manner. Let's remember there are consequences for our behaviors. Let's work together. I think there's a wide open door on both sides of this. As I understand, Rob, I very much appreciate your leadership here. I think we've got good lines of communication. Let's please work together. I just want to close with one thought. I have 2 degrees from the University of Washington, that other place up the road. And I am thrilled each year when I see rankings that they're one of the top 50 universities in the world. It gives me goosebumps. It makes my degrees more valuable, too. I want to feel that good about the University of Oregon. I want us to, see rankings and have goosebumps. And I don't like these rankings that are 92nd, 104th, 86th. That just isn't good enough. We're better than that. So let's attack things that can really release us to be great. Any questions? Or have you had enough so far? Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned at the beginning that there were the 4 search companies, what do we call them, that said that the university administration and the faculty were contentious. Did they tell you what they were basing that perception on?
They weren't explicit about it, but I had heard that before they said it. I mean, I have friends at universities all over the country, and it was not news to me. It's just the wrong image for us. That's not the kind of people we are. Yes, sir.
My name is Nathan Tublitz. I'm a professor of biology. And firstly, I want to thank you very much for coming and talking to us. It's really important that we all talk together, and I appreciate you taking the time. Secondly, I appreciate you giving us your little worry list. I think that's a similar list to what many of us faculty have. My question to you is based upon something you said, which is something that's near and dear to my heart. That is, the most important thing at a university is the faculty. It's the quality of the faculty. The faculty are the brain trust of a university. They all also are the standard bearers and the holders of academic integrity. This has been the case for 800 years in Western academic life. My question to you is, would you consider reaching out to us faculty in a way that really indicates not a management versus labor situation, but reaching out in a real deep shared tradition to allow this brain trust that's in this room and in this university to help you achieve the goals that not only you want, but that we all want. Because I personally believe if you don't do that, we're doomed to failure.
So, did I give you that question? I love the question.
I sort of doubt it.
Well, I am trying very hard personally, and so are most of the members of the board, to do exactly that, to reach out. We haven't publicized this, but I've been meeting, and in fact I have a meeting tomorrow and another one Friday with groups of faculty of about 10 or 12, depends on who's available. And we use it, it's an unstructured just exchange of ideas. I get much more than I give in every one of those. I learn a great deal. And I think we need to have many programs like that. And I know that, I don't know much about the history of the relationship between the university and the faculty and the various other groups. But I do know that now, I hate to keep putting them on the spot, but Scott and Francis and others are very anxious to have these interchanges. And I think you're right. It is the faculty, and there is an enormous amount of brain power here that can help address the issues and the opportunities. So the answer, it's a long answer, but yes, I'm available. I've said I'll meet with any group of one or more. One isn't a group, I realize that, but yes, sir.
Thank you, Chair Lillis. John Bonine, School of Law. I have two questions. One follows up what you just mentioned. I would suggest that the groups you are meeting with, that you perhaps consult with Rob Keir if you have not already, and get some recommendations from faculty bodies of people who might meet with you as well. I'm not sure where those recommendations are coming for 10 or 12 of this or that. But I do think that pursuant to what you were suggesting, the importance to both deal with shared governance and to change what may be perceived as some confrontational activities and so forth, that you may want to meet with some people who are involved in shared governance, and perhaps you already are. But I think that those recommendations need to come from the shared governance bodies. The second thing I wanted to say is I think I could speak for many people here, but they can speak for themselves. We've been, I think, very impressed by our current presidential administration coming to the Senate, sitting in the Senate. We haven't seen that for a while, and we think that's very good. The same would apply, I don't know if anybody can remember when the last time, I think it might have been when the Riviera was being fired or something, that somebody from the state board came down and hung out with Senate people. And of course, Senate means faculty, students, and staff. So the fact that Connie came last time, that you came this time, I would like to propose to you to consider suggesting that each member of the board rotate through here, that we see a board member at every meeting or every second meeting for the next several months, so that we get to know them, but so they get to know that the Senate maybe is not as dysfunctional as some national person might have told you. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I think they're great proposals. Let me just respond to, it's John, right? John? Yeah. The groups of faculty that I'm meeting with are being set up by a faculty member who has been a member of the Senate. I don't know that she still is. And it's a very wide mix of senior and junior faculty, and so at least we're getting some mix. I'm sure we can improve on the mix, but we are getting it. I will certainly discuss with the board some routine visit on the part of board members. We are your new OUS, if you will, for whatever that's about. But I think a lot of trustees would like to visit. I think we should remember, I've had the benefit of I was a professor, not a particularly great one, but I was a professor. And I've been involved in universities. I've been on the Business Advisory Board and the Foundation Board at Colorado and Washington, and have many times been a guest lecturer at Harvard and Wharton. And so I've been around universities a bit. Not many of the trustees have really had that depth of background, so some of us are much more in a learning phase. So given that, don't expect people who are experts at university, but we're learning. And I would say one other thing about the board, there is enormous passion. Whatever the past governance model was, it's different now. You have a board, you have your own board, they have passion and they work. And I think that's just got to be good. It's got to be good. So thank you, John. Yes. Yes, sir. Okay.
Thank you, because I'm actually very late to class right now. And I think we maybe would have more students here if we had a bigger room and like better advertising of this meeting. We got an email like yesterday. But anyway, the reason I'm saying is I really enjoyed a lot of the stuff you said. I agree that we're not a public institution, and I was wondering if there's any way we could address problems like that. I don't think we have any left in the United States, as far as I can tell. And if somehow focus on, when we're raising money also, you said it would be great to hire more science tenured faculty, which I think is a great idea, but I think this also focuses on growth as opposed to quality, which I think is some of the other issues you were addressing. And I was just wondering if you would speak to those.
Yeah, I'll sure try. Well, first let me just say, let me talk about growth. I think at our current enrollment level, we're 130 to 150 tenure track faculty short. I'm not in charge of, I'll let somebody else answer this. I'm not in charge of how large the enrollment should be, but it is a very delicately balanced financial model. If we try to hold the line on tuition, and particularly undergraduate resident tuition, and we try to increase financial aid, we want to maintain at least half or more of the student body being Oregon residents. We don't have a whole lot of degrees of freedom about growing another 5,000 students while we're trying to solve these other problems. So when I use the example of 130 to 150 faculty, I'm thinking of that as calibrated against the 26,000 enrollment we now have. I think the mix needs to change a little. I think we need a little healthier graduate student enrollment than we have, in particular. And there was another point you raised, and what was it? Exactly. Yeah, I would say many institutions are in exactly the same position we are financially. University of Colorado, which is quite a good university and bigger, gets a little more each year percentage-wise from the state than do we. Washington's very similar to where we are. Some of recently the Arizona schools have fallen into this. There are a lot of universities in the country that are in this situation. I think we have to learn how to act accordingly very quickly, though. That's the challenge. But we're not unique in that regard. Yep.
Our parent generation could afford to pay for their own college tuition.
Well, I know you don't think tuition. That's not what I'm asking. It's just you brought up this point. Yep. I was wondering where maybe other members of the board, maybe presidents, maybe not you. I'm not attacking you. I'm just curious. Is this at the root of all the problems you just suggested? Yeah, I don't agree that tuition is the root of all the problems. But okay, but I do think I'm way too old to be your parent. But it used to be that we could make enough money in our summer job to pay for the next year of college. That hasn't happened to any of my children that So I think the fundamental question of is higher education unreasonably expensive, I don't know the answer to. I think I can explain why it is, but I don't know the answer. I'm not sure that the financial model that's currently in use among universities like ourselves, and part of our problem is we aspire to be very good, because it causes more demand. But I'm not sure that the financial model that we've always used will work in the future. Yes, sir.
Sorry, my name's Casey. I'm an undergrad studying poli-sci. So we've talked a lot about financial situations, but then I know that you'll also be overseeing other situations throughout your time on the board. So as an undergrad, I'm having issues, I guess, reconciling who I'm supposed to look to right now with the GTF situation. You said we need a higher enrollment for graduate students, but when we have an administration sending out kind of backhanded emails earlier in the week and that there's just other information being passed around and there is no clear source for it, how do you suggest undergrads go about that? Because it's not a healthy educational environment, and I don't feel that I'm getting the best education, and I don't think that it's necessarily the financial causes of it. I think that it's the dissidence between the administration and the graduate students. And when do we stop looking at good by comparison and start looking at adequate, just adequate as a human being, adequate for the student body?
So I don't know the answer. I'm not involved in any of the negotiations. None of the board is. We have, I think, wisely allocated that responsibility to the administration of the university. So I don't know whether Scott or Francis, you want to say anything about it, but I don't have anything to say. Okay, let's keep going. Yes. I'm sorry, I just don't know an answer. Yes.
I'll speak loud. I'll speak on the mic then. I don't feel qualified to be asking this next question, and so maybe I'll pose it less as a question and more as a comment and an observation. But I want to preface it with thank you for drawing the distinction between good and great. And Jim Collins wrote a book called From Good to Great, and
I know Mr. Collins. So, yeah.
Much respect for Mr. Collins, and he talks about settling for good enough, and how that can be the greatest enemy of great. And when I hear the comments that were made before you got to the stage that we're looking to UCLA and we're comparing ourselves against the money they're spending and we're comparing ourselves to what other people are doing and we're settling for good enough amongst our peers, and to focus maybe on a little bit more micro level with our GTFs or GTFs, we're settling for good enough and we're settling for sort of, I feel like, sort of the minimum to be amongst the good and the great. When do we, and I know there's a place for balance and context, but when do we start looking at being cutting edge? When do we start looking at defining our own path as a university? And instead of playing catch up with other universities, when do we make a decision to be a university that other universities are going to look to?
Great. Okay, so that turned out to be a question. I thought that was nicely done. So I'll give you my perhaps biased answer. I don't want to talk about the GTF particular deal. I'm not. I know. So here's what I would say. I don't think we want to compare ourselves directly in terms of how to become more academically excellent than we are. In one way, I don't think we should compare ourselves with UCLA or Michigan or Stanford or whatever, because I don't think we will ever be able to mount the money to be competitive in as many academic areas as they are, as any of the schools I just mentioned. They have way too much of a head start. It's way more expensive to build some of that now than it was when they built it. So I think the challenge to us is to pick the areas. I don't know how many that is, but you've recently, the faculty and deans and provosts have recently gone through quite an extensive, massively involved process, for example, to select these 10 areas of excellence. And I think that's a start. Not everyone agrees with, I wouldn't want everybody to agree on anything, I suppose, but I think we have to pick some areas where we can afford, because we can raise a lot of gift money and research money, where we can afford to be internationally competitive. I think we have to have a few academic areas where if you're going to be in that field in the world, You want to say on your resume, I went through Oregon. I did some time in whatever that is, the Proteomics Research Center. I don't know what it is. But I don't think we're going to be able to, one of the reviews of Cal Berkeley is that they're very good in more departments than any other university. I don't think there's any way we can compete like that. I think we can compete by finding, pick some number. But with that, I think we have to be a comprehensive research university. So I don't think we can say we're not in the humanities business. If we conclude that, we've decided we're not a comprehensive university. So we have to be a comprehensive university, pick a few areas, 8 or 10, where we can be stars and pour it on becoming stars there. This might offend some of you, but I think we have a great model on the campus. I think athletics has done a very good job of exactly that. Whether you think we should have a football team or not, I think they've done a good job of that. Okay, thank you. Somebody, yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Jason Brown. I'm a professor in creative writing in the creative writing program. And I just want to thank you for coming to speak to us today. I think I haven't been here more than 3 years teaching here, but I was for many years at the University of Arizona, and I never saw this happen there. And part of the reason I came here is because this sort of thing might happen here. It's a different kind of place. Part of the reason I think it's really important is what everyone's already said, is that what I witnessed at University of Arizona, especially with the financial meltdown that happened there and programs being cut, is a total lack of communication between the various levels of governance, And as a member of the faculty, I was more privy, of course, to their thinking and their comments. And I was stunned by how little the faculty seemed to understand the challenges faced by the leadership of the university. I mean, it's understandable. A lot of faculty are saving the world in their classroom, and they just want the money to fall to make it happen. But as someone who worked in nonprofit branding before I was in academics in fiction writing, I have an acute understanding of the importance of making different sides communicate with each other. So anyway, my question or comment is that I love the idea of small groups and of board members coming to speak to us, but I wonder if there might be more comprehensive ways of increasing communication flow between the various levels of governance so that there can be an increased level of understanding, not just between the trustees and the faculty, but also with the students as well, because the more of understanding there is that the challenges you face, among the students and the faculty, right, the more we're going to be really behind you. And also understand that we don't see you, we don't project a parental figure on the purse holders or whatever. We see that you are facing challenges and really headed in the same direction that we are, you know what I mean? Because the dysfunction that I saw at University of Arizona was half the time based on fictional assumptions about the other side. Yeah.
Well, thank you. So I think it's a great challenge to all the leaders in the room, is how do we get and maintain this open flow of communication, and I'll just say it one more time, in a highly respectful, professional manner. One of the problems is it's very hard for an individual faculty member, as you said, to understand sort of this quagmire of regulation and finance and history and protocol that any university operates in. And it's pretty hard for administrators or executives, if they haven't been a faculty member, to really understand the life of a faculty member, which is pretty unique based on my limited experience with it. So I asked somebody, if I may ask you a question, I know somebody from, it's either Iowa, is that where the writing school that's so good? Iowa. And I asked somebody here, how can Iowa have that quality of writing school and we don't? I asked the same question about volcanology. We have a family foundation, and one of our students is a PhD student in volcanology at Georgia Tech, for God's sakes. They haven't seen a volcano there in 4,000 years. We're living here. So volcanology made the top 10 list, I was pleased to see. Anything else, or have we had enough for today? Yes, sir.
Okay, cool. Hi, my name's Sean. I'm a student here. First of all, just going to reiterate everything. Thank you so much for coming by and talking to the Senate. Really appreciate it. My concern, and the one question I want to bring up, is I originally am a Californian. There's been a lot of talk about the UC system in comparison, and a lot of talk about increasing Oregon's international prominence and bringing in greater students. A lot of people forget that the opposite side of that coin is kind of turning your back on Oregonians here, and which is what I see the UC system has done. I didn't even apply at any UCs because I strongly believe they've turned their back on Californians. How are you going to make sure that this university, which originally was a land-grant university meant for Oregonians who would pay taxes into it, how are you going to make sure this university does not turn its back on Oregonians?
Great question. Great question. What year in school are you?
I'm a third year.
Third year, and what's your major? Political science. Sounded like a political science question, but so here's my answer. In the $2 billion capital campaign that Mike Andreessen and Scott and Francis and others are doing, I think, a very good job of advancing. One of the three major thrusts of that is about student access, and that sort of code for financial aid, and some very huge chunk of that $2 billion. I'm not sure I remember that, but perhaps $300 million in our model is aimed at resident Oregon students. Well, that would be, I don't know, $200 million more than we currently have. So I think there's a huge passion for it. In fact, I think one of the proposals that I don't know exactly how much of this you've heard, but it was advanced by a trustee, one of the trustees, Rudy Chapa. I don't know if you've met Rudy, but terrific, smart thinker. Rudy brought to our knowledge a program at the University of Texas, Austin, where they have created this thing where they wrap sort of in an envelope everything that impacts the success of an undergraduate, so that you can think what that is. That's everything from financial aid to available coursework to emotional counseling to housing. They wrap this all in one integrated management effort, labeled and built around increasing student success, undergraduate student success. And Rudy brought to the board a similar idea, and we have, those of us who have been out asking for assistance, financial assistance, we're using that as an idea to further enhance the opportunity for Oregon residents. University of California kind of amazes me. They have arguably the best university system in the world. I mean, I think any metric suggests that. And they're thinking about breaking themselves up. I'm not quite sure how those two thoughts go together, but at any rate, how about one more question and then you should do your work? How about no more questions? Okay, well, thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We deeply appreciate all of your commitment to the university and for reaching out to us. And as I said before you spoke, we're on it already, and we will be partnering with you in many ways and coming back to you to discuss the most effective ways that we can make the best partnership possible to move our university forward. So, thank you again. Thank you so much. We'll now move forward with the agenda, new business. First, we have an announcement from Andrew Bonamici. Andrew.
Well, thank you very much, Rob. My name is Andrew Bonamici. I'm Associate Dean for Media and Instructional Services in the U of O Library, and I'm really grateful to be on the Senate agenda this afternoon to make a very important announcement that's actually very relevant to what Mr. Lillis just shared about the instructional technology environment. So I'm here on behalf of the Learning Management System Task Force. You've heard reports from this task force repeatedly through last academic year, and I'll be bringing you up to date on the process of reviewing and selecting a new learning management system and getting this done before September 30th, 2015, when our current Blackboard license expires. Following an extensive review that included nearly 100 faculty and GTFs, dozens of staff, and nearly 2,000 students, we're very pleased to be able to move forward with the task force's #1 recommendation, Canvas by Instructure. I'll give you some of the findings from the LMS review and the pilot phase of the review process, and you're getting a handout. I encourage you to take a look at that for some more specifics, and we also have links and contacts about the project and the transition available on that handout, and these will be very widely shared in the coming days. So our pilot testing indicates that Canvas is going to save faculty, GTF, and student time, and will enhance student engagement in ways that may lead to improved learning outcomes. The faculty, GTFs, and students who pilot tested the Canvas system rated it very positively for friendly and easy-to-learn user interface, gradebook features, email communications and notifications, overall navigation, speed grader functionality. Canvas provides a free mobile interface. Some of the data points collected during the pilot tests are along these lines. 80% of the faculty and GTFs who tested Canvas recommend that we switch platforms. 80% of the faculty and GTFs who tested this system rated it as better than previous systems they've used. 89% of faculty and GTFs were satisfied or extremely satisfied with Canvas. That's an astronomical number for anyone who's ever dealt with software review. 75% of faculty and GTFs who tested Canvas agree that Canvas made their teaching more efficient. We've been hearing all through the day, how can we be more efficient? How can we increase quality? If we can free time on routine administrative functions, we can concentrate more on engagement with students and on our research. 52% of the students who tested Canvas agree that Canvas helped them become more engaged with course content. 44% of the students agreed that it saved them time and that it helped them learn course content more effectively. We'll have links to more detailed charts. You'll be able to drill down into the review process if you want. But these were some very compelling findings that the task force definitely appreciated. So the transition, we anticipate that Canvas will be available for live courses beginning spring term 2015. Both Blackboard and Canvas will be fully supported throughout the transition period. We'll be releasing the Canvas blog, blogs.uoregon.edu Canvas, for implementation and transition details as those become available. We know that this represents a very significant change in a critical system for all of our students, GTFs, faculty, and staff. And the LMS team in the UO libraries is ramping up support to help you with this transition. So we have, you might remember from last year, we have GTF positions to assist with the transition funded by the fiscal year 2015 strategic budget request process, and we're very grateful for that support. We're also in the process of redesigning some permanent staff positions to be concentrating more and building capacity for course development and course design to make most effective use of the features of the Canvas platform. And these support programs are being developed in active collaboration with our partners in teaching effectiveness in the schools and colleges, information services, academic extension, and many more throughout the campus. So we're really grateful for all of those partnerships as well. And I want to encourage all of you to work in your departments and schools and colleges and programs. If you want us to come and visit you in a departmental meeting, walk you through this process and what the transition might look like, how you'll be able to find help and support, please let us know. There's contact information on the handout. So finally, I know we're very short on time. I want to thank all of you for taking part in this very significant decision. Special thanks to the LMS task force and all the faculty, GTF staff, and students whose work and feedback made this decision possible. And with apologies for the fine print, if you want to look through the last page of the handout, you can see the range of individuals and their departments and programs that were involved in this process. And last but certainly not least, Helen, I want you to stand up because, yeah. Helen Hsu is Director of Academic Technology, and she's done a marvelous job as project manager for the transition and in leading the LMS team. Nina Fox is with Helen today. Nina is our recently hired LMS service manager. So I think that's probably about all the time we have today. Please look through the brochure. We want to get your questions, comments, suggestions on the transition process. Thank you for your understanding and your support. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you so much for making that announcement today and for actually choosing the Senate as the place to do that. In the spirit of what Chuck was telling us, the Senate should be regarded, has been, should be from henceforth regarded as a place for everybody to come and to participate, not just the senators, but as you can see, we have a full house today, and we honor all the voices, and we also want this to be a place where people can find out about the newest and most important initiatives at the university, and today is an example of that. Thanks again to all those who worked to make this possible. Next on our agenda is a motion. It's legislation. Opposition to efforts by academic affairs to dilute and degrade academic standards in the event of a graduate teaching fellows strike. The owners of this motion are Monique Balbuena, Senator Clark Honors College; Jane Kramer, Senator Political Science; John Davidson, Senator Political Science; Diane Dugas, Senator English; Deborah Olson, Senator Education; Gina Psaki, Senator Romance Languages; and Gordon Sayre, Senator English. Who will be moving the motion? I believe Gordon, is that correct? Would you please move the motion? And I'll call for a second.
Move the motion.
Second, please. Thank you. That was Deb Merskin. Senator Merskin is the second. And now we will read the motion, and for the sake of time, I'm not going to read the whereas clauses. If you would please take a look on the screen. But because we vote on Section 2, the therefore moved clauses, I will read those. And please feel free to read the whereas clauses as I do this, if you can multitask. Section 2.1, be it therefore moved that the Senate, as the legitimate representative body of the faculty, reject on behalf of the faculty this confidential memo, the secret process by which it was written, and the dilution and degradation of academic standards it suggests. 2.2, and be it furthermore moved that the Senate directs Interim President Scott Coltrane and his administrators to work openly, publicly, and transparently with the UO faculty through the UO Senate in accordance with the UO Constitution to determine how the university will maintain its academic standards in the event of a strike by the GTFF. Financial impact, cost neutral, and we've already mentioned all of the sponsors. Now we'll call for background from Gordon or any of the sponsors. And if you would like to also speak about the memo, just to inform everybody, as there are some here who may not have read it. Would you like to make a statement, Gordon?
Well, myself and several other sponsors had some correspondence about addressing different aspects of this motion separately. So I'd like to pass it along, for one, to Jane Kramer and also to Gina Saki. Is that consistent with our plans? Okay.
Thank you. And please identify yourself before you speak. Thank you.
I'm Gina Saki in Romance Languages. We did not come to be cranky, cross, or pick a fight. The language sounds otherwise, but we're all very concerned about the academic integrity of our courses, our teaching, and how that interfaces with our graduate teaching fellows with whom we've been working over the course of this term, and who strangle that digression at birth and read quickly. Some pedagogically inadequate solutions have been suggested for palliating the effects of a GTFF strike: canceling class hours in dead week, modifying exams for some or all courses, shifting oral exams from one-on-one to small groups, shifting essay exams to short answer exams, changing the page length for final essays, a euphemism for shortening, give multiple choice exams for ease of grading. Let students choose to be graded based on work done so far in the class, with a note this strategy can be applied department-wide or on a course-by-course basis. Hire upper-level undergraduates, OAs, or non-GTF grads. Add department heads or alternative faculty as instructors of record on our grading. I have nothing against multiple choice or short answer exams where they were chosen on pedagogical grounds as the best way to evaluate student mastery of the material. Where they were deliberately not chosen, however, they represent a dilution of academic quality and a lowering of academic standards imposed, and that's a problem in and of itself. In my courses, it would be educational malpractice to use this kind of shortcut to evaluate what I teach. You can't evaluate how well students have learned to write an essay by having them write short answers. You can't evaluate how well students have learned to articulate complex ideas by giving a multiple choice exam. If I were to choose to run my courses this way, under my own steam, I wouldn't get away with it. Our course assignments are carefully constructed to not only measure mastery, but to strengthen it. Many deliberately give assignments that students can learn from while doing them. It's the faculty members' prerogative to choose how to assess, how to teach, how to assess what we are teaching. And for that reason, I urge you to vote in favor of this.
And I believe Professor Kramer, yes,
yeah,
please.
So I would just add, we were dividing up what to say. This came out of the fact that we were, that it was leaked, that there was a confidential memo. And a bunch of us are like, what is that? Now, I've learned since we wrote this that this confidential memo was requested or something, which I don't know, but there's this whole range of rumor. But a bunch of us were like, what do you mean confidential memo on what you would do? Why would it be confidential when it's suggested to the faculty? So, and also, a bunch of those items that were suggested were things that in your own department you have to fight against constantly, the pressure to implement these things when you know it's wrong. And so we were like, that's just wrong. So that's where this memo comes from.
Thank you for your comments. Is that all from the sponsors of the motion? If so, we can now move to open the floor for discussion and debate. Please. Doug Blandy.
So, Doug Blandy, Academic Affairs. I wouldn't dispute anything that was said. I think it's important to provide some context. The confidentiality associated with this memo was because it was preliminary work that has now led to a second directive that has been released and which probably many in this room have seen. It's also important to acknowledge that many significant hours were spent by an academic continuity team talking with deans, associate deans, and unit heads to do an inventory of possibilities that could be adopted by departments. None of this is prescriptive. It is up to individual units, their heads, and their faculty to decide how to move forward in the event of a strike by our graduate teaching assistants. The one thing that Academic Affairs believes is vitally important is that we not betray our students in the event of a graduate teaching assistant strike, and that we provide a seamless experience as possible in the best academic way that we can do.
Thank you for your comment. Barbara Altman.
Hello, Barbara Altman, also from Academic Affairs. We know that anything that we send out by email is going to hit every blog and every other email circuit within 30 seconds. The confidential marking on that was a vestige of an older document and should never have been on that. It was intended to engender more ideas and more consultation, and we'd very, very much like to have the collaboration and help of our colleagues to think through how we can best handle the appropriate evaluation of work in every kind of class in every area across the campus. Our major concern is simply to do what Doug called seamless transition through to the end of term. We're very concerned about undergraduate students losing financial aid or being unable to register for sequential courses if they don't have final grades in some of their fall term work. And we would really very much like to tap into your pedagogical expertise, your field areas, and have you help us figure out what unusual measures we can best use in these unusual times. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Other comments, questions? Please. And then Michael Dreiling, and I saw a hand here.
Hi, Mike Price in math. So I don't have good statistics on this, but anecdotally it seems that in a number of departments, faculty are resistant to the notion of sort of filling in the gaps if there were a GTF strike, not doing additional work, not taking overtime. I wonder if the sponsors of the bill could speak to how do you maintain the continuity here if the other members of the unclassified staff aren't going to step up to take on additional responsibilities?
Gordon Sayre.
Yes, I think we all understand that there are different situations that can be dealt with in different ways. If a faculty member is teaching a large course and has GTFs who are graders or section leaders, and those GTFs are not available to grade final exams, I think many faculty might put aside their qualms about crossing picket lines and take on many, many hours of extra work to grade those exams themselves. Some will, some won't. I respect those decisions. I'm very concerned, however, about hundreds of classes that are taught independently by GTFs who are teaching material which faculty members are not familiar with, have not read, who are writing exams that faculty members cannot grade. And what is to be done for these courses? I don't think it's responsible or appropriate to ask people who have no familiarity with the course material to suddenly jump in and write and grade exams and tests and papers.
Comment from another sponsor, Gina Saki.
What he said, but with the caveat that in many cases our undergraduates, they're being taught by graduate students who know them, who have followed them, who have been tracking their work, working with them one-on-one to improve it. There isn't a way for a seamless educational delivery here in the absence of the GTFs. And as much as I would like to palliate impact on our undergraduate students, our graduate students are our students too. So not betraying our students is a simplistic phrase in a situation which you know very well is so very not simple.
Other comments on Nathan Tublitz? Michael Dreiling first and then Nathan. Sorry about that. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. Sometimes I believe everybody, good people, make regrettable decisions. And sometimes those decisions result in consequences that affect institutional or human values in a way that I think need to be acknowledged. And I think we're in a moment where that is the case, where a decision was made to develop procedures affecting undergraduate curriculum in hundreds of courses that bypassed the constitutionally mandated role of the Senate and the undergraduate council. That decision doesn't mean the people who made that decision are bad people, but it means the decision crossed the line. And that's what I think this motion is about. And I think we just got to acknowledge that there is a role for the undergraduate council. There is a role for the Senate. And when faculty start asking questions, which all my colleagues are asking, well, who's going to grade these student papers? You mean I'm going to have to pass these on to somebody who's unqualified, never been in my course to grade these? I can't just submit an X and wait till the university and the GTFF resolve this issue and then a grade be submitted once that is resolved? The answer we're getting is no. And so faculty are, I think, rightly concerned about the compromise of the integrity of our academic standards, our course standards, and the standards of our very profession by procedures that call on unqualified graders to grade course material that they had no contact with, among the other items that are listed in that document. So that, I think, just coming back to this motion, to the line that I believe was crossed, that I think clearly was crossed. It's just there's not a blurry line here. The Senate and the undergraduate council are to be consulted when dramatic changes to course processes occur. And it didn't happen. That's period.
Thank you for your comments. Nathan Tublitz.
Nathan Tublitz, Biology. We've talked in this short discussion about process and procedures and lines that have been crossed. What we haven't talked about is the moral and ethical issues that underlie all of this. The GTFs are our colleagues. This university can't run without the GTFs. The GTFs aren't asking for the moon and the sun and the stars. They're asking for a livable wage. They're asking for a small assistance in case they're sick. We are a moral and ethical institution. We are not a corporate entity. We have a responsibility to everybody at this institution to treat them fairly and with respect. My question, not to you, Rob, but to the administration, specifically to President Coltrane, if he's still here, is what are you going to do to end this strike threat now, today, by 5 o'clock, which I believe is very short.
10 minutes away.
Okay? Because we can't run without the GTFs. We need them. We respect them. We need to end this threat and stop dealing with all this stupid bureaucracy and all the amount of time that, with all due respect, academic affairs has spent putting out memo after memo after memo, which are completely ridiculous. Let's get down to the brass tacks and solve the problem. That's what we're here for. That's what we heard Chuck Lillis tell us. Work together, solve the problems. Let's do it now.
Thank you for your comment. Another comment? Please, President Coltrane.
Yeah, Professor Tublitz, I realize that you think it's easy to fix. We've been in bargaining for almost a year.
the offer that we have on the table is more generous than our competitors. The administration has moved. I urge everybody to read what our offers are that have just been posted, because bargaining is confidential and happens only behind the union and the administration coming to the table. And this is true. We're in a unionized environment now that we haven't been before. We have a union for the faculty, a union for GTFFs. They've never gone on strike before. I encourage you to engage in getting to the truth of what's on the table. We have a very, very generous offer. We've moved significantly. The fact there's been no movement on the GTFF side for all the principal issues really stopped this thing.
Where is the place that everybody can go? Let's just say it again so everybody hears it really clearly to see this.
The Provost website.
Thank you. Carla McNelly. And then Lisa Frankel.
Hi, my name's Carla McNelly, and I'm the president of the SEIU Local 085, and I'd like to respond to getting to the truth. Part of the information that's in that memo that just came out before this meeting is inaccurate. Classified staff that work part-time, accrue paid leave. So when you say that it doesn't happen for other constituents on this campus, then it would cause ill will. The classified staff would like to join the grad students in receiving paid leave. Thank you.
Lisa Frankel.
So this is all heartbreaking, right? I mean, let's just acknowledge how heartbreaking this is. So I was grad director in comparative literature for 9 years. Now I'm the vice provost for undergraduate studies. The complexities that Gina drew attention to, the complexities of what it means to support our students, this is heartrending. So I just urge us to think very, very clearly. And I think the key concept here is that these are context-based, very local decisions. These are department by department, unit by unit. How do you meet this? How do you meet the needs of your undergraduates? How do you support your graduate students? These have to be conversations that happen among colleagues, recognizing the full implications. The implications for undergrads are very heavy. For some of our most vulnerable students who are facing issues with financial aid, for students in gated majors who won't know until after they get their final grades whether they're actually in that major or not. There are huge implications for all of our students and for our community. So working together isn't simply about collective bargaining. It's actually about heart open, face-to-face, context by context, moment by moment, making very, very difficult choices, weighing all of the implications. I urge us to find a way to let down the rhetoric that binds us so often, has to bind us. I mean, I'm a literature professor. I get it. I urge us to find a way to reach across to each other, moment by moment, context by context, thinking about how each of our words, each of our decisions are going to affect all of the 24,500 students on our campus, how they're going to affect all of our staff and faculty, most of whom are represented by unions at this point, some of whom are not, right? We all have a say in this, and we all have an impact to feel and to make. So I'm a little shaky right now because, you know, this is heartbreaking. It's also one of those defining moments in a unionized context. We have to get through it. Then we'll have to be on the other side of it. We'll have to keep moving forward. We're trying to figure out how to do this. We're all stumbling, all of us. How many presidents have we had in the past few years? How much turnover have we seen in the leadership? How much turnover have we seen in our classes, in our faculty meetings? How many issues have we faced? How much do we have on the table now that we're all trying to figure out? How overwhelmed are we all? So we're stumbling. Let's try to stumble together. And I think that's all I have to say, but I'm glad to be here.
Thank you for your comments. Yes, I saw this hand first, then Kurt Wilcox, and person next to Kurt, please.
I'm Karen Creighton from PE Rec, formerly adjunct, now non-tenure track faculty thanks to our union contract. So I have three things. One is I've been an adjunct, and we've had the equivalent of paid leave in our department for years. The new union contract, as Ron Bramhall pointed out at the rally, guarantees that adjuncts and non-tenure track faculty have the equivalent of paid leave because we can't be docked monetarily or disciplined for calling in sick. So just speaking as a member of United Academics faculty union, I see no possibility of envy on that point. My second point is teaching PE. I do have an opportunity to get to know students well and talk with them. And they started asking me about the possible GTF strike. They're very upset because it impacts them. So I do appreciate that everybody on both sides is considering it. Several of my students offered to pay the GTFs directly rather than pay the university because they said they paid the same amount. One student said, I pay $52,000 a year anyway. I'll just pay the GTFs. So they would like to be represented. They would like to have a voice. And my third point starts to tread on a contentious line, but I'm going to go there anyway because I feel it's important, that I went to most of the bargaining sessions for United Academics, and there were moments that were tense. And I went to the GTF bargaining that happened over the summer, and I went with another faculty member who also actually was on the bargaining team. And I'm not going to pull any punches. We were appalled at how the university lawyer spoke to the GTF bargaining team. It was insulting. We couldn't believe it. And I, therefore, have a really hard time accepting what I hear coming from administrative memos.
Kurt Wilcox, and then the gentleman next to him, and then I'm going to call the vote unless there's an objection. And
thank you, Rob. Kurt Wilcox. I'm a researcher in the College of Ed and also the non-faculty staff member on the Board of Trustees. I want to be clear. I'm speaking for myself. I am not speaking for the board. And I want to say a couple of things. I am someone who has been coming to Senate meetings regularly. I wish more board members would do that. I'm glad to see Chuck and Connie. We're both here. Rudy Chapa has been here before, and I do hope more will do that, because I do think there is a misperception on the part of many board members about the University Senate, how it operates, and its level of function or dysfunction. I think it would be very helpful for them to see. I want to second what Carla was saying about the material that the university has sent out today about the GTFF negotiations. The basic thrust is we're being very generous here, and really you should just take it and not complain. And I think it is important to say that the university has made some movement in negotiations. That's very good to see. But I think it's very important to be truthful when you describe what you've said you've done. And while on the surface there is some truth, I think the two key points that they make in terms of why the proposal should be accepted are not quite ingenuous. As Carla said, the statement in the material says the majority of employees at the university do not earn paid benefits under half-time, 0.5 FTE. That is true, but there are 1,600 classified employees who do qualify to earn part-time benefits under 0.5 FTE. So this is not new ground. This is not inequity for all other employees on campus. Classified employees do have that right. The other thing that is mentioned is to say that the GTFs are asking for something that nobody else has got on campus, which is paid leave in an illness, accident, or a parental leave circumstance. On the surface, that is true. Nobody has that. But other groups on campus, like classified, like faculty, earn sick leave, earn vacation leave, and they have the ability to apply some of the paid leave they earn in these situations. Graduate teaching fellows don't earn sick leave, don't earn vacation. And so they have asked for a very minimal proposal, which is to have some sort of paid leave in these extraordinary circumstances of a major illness, accident, or parental leave. So whether you agree with what the GTFs are asking for or not, it is very important to be direct and truthful and completely truthful about proposals as you describe your own. And so I would encourage the administration, as I have already said directly to Scott, I do think this will be a disaster if there is a GTF strike. There is no good, there's no upside. We're talking about academic standards. Those are a problem and problems for undergrad students. But you also have a $2 billion capital campaign that Chuck talked about. You have a presidential search that's going on. We have an effort to recruit 150 tenure track faculty and associated graduate assistants. And these things are a GTFF strike over this issue of medical hardship leave is going to be a real disaster. It's going to send the wrong message to all the people we want to recruit here or get money from. I think it will clearly damage this administration, and it will leave wounds that will be here for a long time. I would really urge the Senate to pass this, but I also would urge the administration to find a way to come back to the bargaining table and not just say about how generous we're being, but find a way to settle this. Thank you.
One last comment, and then I call for a vote.
My name is Matthew Dennis. I'm a professor of history and environmental studies, and we've heard a lot talking, broadly across this issue, but I'd like to focus it most specifically on the motion at hand, which is not about whether or not the strike should be settled, or who's right or who's wrong, or what's reasonable and what isn't, but actually how to make this transition, assuming that the strike happens. And so if the strike happens, how do we have that seamless transition? So I find Gina and others' comments compelling, but and what I hear in so basically I have a simple question. Most of the problems that are that have been identified are administrative rather than actually pedagogical. And so it seems to me whether financial aid can or can't be granted, whether people can or can't declare majors, whether they can enroll in classes that are sequential. These seem like administrative questions. And maybe they have an administrative solution that doesn't necessarily require compromising academic standards. And so it's really just a question I have. Is that a correct perception? If it is, then it seems to me then the logical thing to do is really have the administrative part of our university really be as creative as possible to try to make this transition work without changing how we actually teach our classes and evaluate our students.
Thank you. And having heard no objections, I'm going to call for, yes, please, Beatriz Gutierrez, ASUO President.
Hi, my name is Beatriz Gutierrez. I'm ASUO President. And I want to make a couple points before the discussion closes. First, as an undergrad, this motion is very important to make sure that students, and representing all students on campus, this is really essential that we come here for a quality education. And I think that the contingency plan or whatever was outlined in this memo is not enough to guarantee the quality of education that we came here for and that we're paying for. And also as representative of the students, the grad students are also our peers as undergrads. And it's very important to me and to students. I think there's a lack of students here right now because there's not a lot of knowledge of what's going on. All we get is emails from administration that doesn't really tell us what is happening and what the real issues are. So I think this is really important, and we support our grad students and our GTFs to be getting the kind of quality pay that they deserve to be teaching us. So yeah, I just want to make those points. Thank you.
Thank you. One last comment from Ken Doxey.
Thank you, Rob, for your patience. Ken Doxey from Academic Affairs. I'm also a professor of chemistry, a position I've held here at the university since 1989. And in alignment with my colleagues' thoughts here about focusing back onto the motion before the conclusion and the vote, I'm going to express a little confusion about the discussion. I appreciate the comments that have been made, but in the context of the motion, I'm thinking to my job as a professor as I prepare a final for my course. And then the Committee on Courses, the Senate, the undergraduate council or graduate council don't talk to me about the final that I write for my course. That's my judgment as the professor of record for the course. It's my determination. And that's as it should be. So I have a disconnect with the whereases and the motion, and that the whereases note that this memo suggests that faculty consider approaches for their own final examinations. It doesn't demand them to change their approaches. It doesn't require it. It doesn't do it by fiat. It simply suggests that faculty facing the reality of the situation consider making a change. And I, in the end, can't conclude for myself why that's an objectionable suggestion given the state of affairs. It's not a requirement. It's not a demand. It's simply a suggestion to consider. Thank you.
Point of clarification, John Bonine.
Senate President, to repeat, as I understand, that this Senate is not voting on whereas clauses, and while it's interesting that there may be some questions about whereas clauses, this Senate is voting only on the resolved clauses. Is that correct?
We vote only on Section 2, the whereas, not the whereas clauses, but the be it therefore moved clauses. So I'm going to call the vote now. And I would like the senators, when I ask you to respond, to please hold up your name tents as well, just so we can be clear about this, because they're scattered throughout the hall. Yes? Please. Point of objection.
I'd rather not move to the vote right this moment. There was a... okay. I know. Information...
Yeah, it's non-debatable. We've called it, I'm sorry to say. So...
You have... Okay, let's go for it.
Okay, thank you. So all in favor of the motion, please say aye and raise your name tents. And now opposed? Nay. Okay, the motion carries. That was to close debate. Now, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Raise your name tents. And now, nay. The motion carries. Thank you. So we will now adjourn and return to our agenda on December 3rd, exactly where we left off. Thank you so much for a great meeting today, for your respectful dialogue. Thank you for your service.